The Fringe Podcast Summer Rewatch, Episode 14.
This is John Noble, and you're listening to the Fringe Podcast.
Web hosting for the Fringe Podcast is provided by HostGator. Easy WordPress installation, unlimited domains, unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, and a 99.9% uptime guarantee. On sale now for $6.36 a month. Visit thefringepodcast.com/hosting and start serving up your website from the best hosting company in any universe. Welcome back to the Fringe Podcast Summer Rewatch as we are starting Season 4 tonight, and I could not be more excited to be starting Season 4. That means a couple of things. I mean, we're now talking about the last season of Fringe that we have been given. Obviously, we haven't been given Season 5 yet, but that's the other thing it means. It means that we're getting really, really close to the premiere of Fringe Season 5 as we start our Season 4 rewatch tonight. And so tonight we are covering 5 episodes, the Season 4 premiere, Neither Here Nor There, One Night in October, Alone in the World, Subject 9, and Novation. And we're just a few weeks away now from the Season 5 premiere, about a little less than 5 weeks away, just barely 5 weeks, less than 5 weeks away. So very excited about that. Hopefully that you'll be joining us for Season 5. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. But for this podcast tonight, I am joined by 3 awesome Fringe fans. We have Allan and John and Brandon. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
So let's see, John, is this your first time you've joined us?
Second time.
Second time. Okay. I wanted to make sure if you had been with us before, I was going to let you introduce yourself. But if you've been with us before, or had not been with us before, rather, but since you have, we won't worry about that. And so good to have you back. John was our alternate tonight and stepped in when we had somebody that wasn't able to make it. So John, I appreciate your flexibility and jumping in here at the last minute to join us tonight.
Always.
We're going to get right into these episodes here in just a moment. But before we do that, I mentioned that the Season 5 premiere of Fringe is coming up September the 28th. I also want to remind everybody that the Season 4 DVDs and Blu-rays are set to release this upcoming Tuesday, September the 4th. Is that right? Yeah, I think. Am I a week away or 2 weeks away? Let me pull up my calendar real quick and verify that. I know that it's September the 4th. I just don't want to mistake. Yeah, it's 2 weeks away, 2 Tuesdays away. We have the 28th, and then we have September the 4th. So I'm glad I looked that up. So be aware of that release date is coming up very, very quickly, and hopefully you guys will be picking that up on either DVD or Blu-ray. If you do us a favor and go over to thefringepodcast.com, and right there on our right-hand sidebar, we have a picture of all 4 seasons of Fringe on DVD. If you click on that, that'll take you over to Amazon, and anything you purchase from that point forward over at Amazon, we get a small commission for that, and every little bit helps pay the bills here at Golden Sparrow Media and keeps us doing what we're doing. And so we would sure appreciate that if you're going to be purchasing those on DVD or Blu-ray when they release on September the 4th. You can go ahead and pre-buy them right now, and that way they'll be at your doorstep on September the 4th. All right, so we have someone who's just adding a note here to the show notes. Okay, I think that's a fair discussion, Allan. So, I think Allan is asking if we can do this before we get into the specific episode. So why not? The question he's asking here is can we start the discussion whether or not it was a good idea to quote unquote remove Peter from the timeline, and if he came back at the right time, which would be the 5th episode. So, Allan, I'll just let you kick that off. What are your thoughts on that question?
Right. I actually brought this question up because there's a lot of people who actually had very, they thought that it is a bad idea to actually, to rewrite the whole, history of Fringe. And basically, it makes us feel like it's a different show and it's a different history, and therefore it doesn't, the whole 3 seasons doesn't make any sense anymore. But personally, I do think that this is the most, this an important step, and it's really brave for the
Sure.
behind the camera to actually do this because primarily this is the main, the main reason why Fringe existed anyway in the very first episode or the very first season, which is basically Peter is an anomaly, and Peter has to be removed from the timeline to correct the mistake of September. And good thing that I like about Fringe because they do um they do present solution to a question that they posted like way before, which is in season one. And for me, if they didn't do that, I felt like I've been cheated because they have been stringing giving us, oh, Peter is is an anomaly. He's from the alternate universe. He should not exist in this timeline. He is just like an outsider of this universe, and therefore, so what's the solution for that? Which is essentially what the producers and creators and the writers did, which is to remove Peter from the equation.
Sure.
And I think, whether he came back at the right time, which is in the fifth episode, I felt like if we have a good rating, if we do actually try very well in the network, I had the feeling that it will be actually good for us to have like a whole season without Peter.
Wow.
Because in that way, we could actually explore the history of what's different or this timeline from the 3 seasons that we see Fringe with Peter. Because if you think about it, the real timeline and the real universe is actually the universe without Peter.
Sure.
Because he should have died.
Right.
So
Well, or Walternate should not have been distracted, and then Walternate would have found the cure. So Peter should have lived in the Redverse.
or that, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I can go with you, though, that you would have liked to have seen him being gone a whole season so that we could fully explore that. I think we got a good enough representation of that over these first 4 episodes so that we could kind of, put some pieces together on what life was like without him. I can't imagine Josh Jackson not being involved for an entire season.
I think that will be rather interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The thing that annoys me is we had these 5 episodes are fantastic episodes, but the next few episodes that it's some of them are hit and miss. They should have put more episodes in this 5 episode run rather than some of the episodes at the middle part of the season, which I really had no feelings about it.
Yeah, I don't know that I will disagree with that. We'll see how I feel after I've had a chance to rewatch them, because honestly, as we go through these episodes here in just a few moments, after having rewatched these first 4 episodes, and I'm splitting that off from the 5th one when he returns, although he returns at the very end of the 4th one, but that doesn't count.
Yeah.
I like what they did there. They had some really cool things that they threw in there that make a whole lot more sense in retrospect than they did going through it the first time, and I enjoyed a lot of them the first time through. But so my point in that is I may end up having an even deeper appreciation for those as I rewatch them, because I don't rewatch ahead. I rewatch what I have to do for each week. That way I can focus on just those episodes and not get episodes all confused.
Yep.
So I haven't watched anything beyond these first 5, or rewatched the beyond the first 5 yet. But it's an interesting question, and I think that, you know, I do think it would be cool to explore it. But if we knew that Fringe was going to get 8 seasons, it would not be a risk to take Josh Jackson out of a season and explore that in more detail. I would be on board for that. But they didn't. You know, they were struggling to know if they were going to get renewed after the end of the 4 seasons. So there's no way they would have gone that route and not put him in for an entire season. I think they did the best that they thought that they could. And, you know, would you have liked to have seen it explored more deeply? I think that's, you know, each person would have to answer that for their own selves. That's a matter of personal preference. But I like what they did with it. But I don't like everything that they did. I don't like that Walter never got the memories he had with his son at the end of, you know, the first 3 seasons. I don't like that Walter doesn't remember those. I don't know how I feel about the Nina-Olivia relationship. You know, we'll see how I feel about that at the end of the rewatch. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, if they took this arc out of this story set, would you have even missed it? I mean, he eventually came back, and they eventually had all of the repercussions of that, but they still would have had those if Peter had never disappeared in the first place. So what was the point in him going away at all?
Well, I think they had to. I think they had to show that when the bridge was created, instead of the machine creating or destroying one universe or the other, there was a bridge to join the 2 universes. I think there had to be some sort of consequence of that. And
that's why you think they did it.
That's why I think they did it, so that there would be.
Could they have been like, nobody has red licorice anymore? It could have been pink, something like that?
I don't think it would have been as effective. I think
they did it because they need to have solutions to September's problem, which is allowing Peter to live from season 1 to season 3.
But if September hadn't interfered, Peter would still be alive in the first place.
Right, in the Redverse.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
And that goes back to, and that's the question that they're raising in the chat room here, and the part of this was to get rid of the baby nugget. But the question we posed last week when we talked about the baby nugget birth was, well, if Peter had never come over to the Blueverse, and his destiny is to be with Olivia, well, then he probably would have hooked up with Redverse Olivia, and baby nugget probably would have been born. So what was the big deal about erasing baby nugget?
So what is the real intervention here? Is it the September intervening Walter Nate from getting the medicine, or him trying to save Peter and Walter in Raiden Lake?
I have a theory that September interfering originally in Walter Nate's lab was actually part of a setup.
That's also what I think.
Okay.
Because
can you elaborate? Yeah.
When the timeline reset, they chose to return to after that had happened and allow Peter to drown in the lake. They could have gone back several days before and prevented September from interfering in the lab in the first place. That would mean that Walter would no longer have a reason to cross over to the Redverse, and the war between the universes wouldn't have occurred.
Well, they might have the same.
This war may play into the Observer's plans for the future in some way, which is why they allowed that interference to still happen and the war to still exist without Peter.
I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, that would be nice. I was just verse, from Britain and all that. He always says, yeah, he can go back in time, but he can't cross his own timeline. So maybe they're prevented from crossing their own timeline.
Sure.
Then how did they prevent him from saving Peter after he had already done so?
You got me.
Yeah. Somebody's got an echo on. That was weird. Does everyone have their video muted?
Well, I think that erasing Peter from the timeline wasn't handled very well. Because on one hand, you have the large change that resulted because of Peter not being there. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, they spend half of the season undoing that change by reintegrating Peter into the timeline. So you either have most of the 3 seasons irrelevant, or the first 4 episodes of this season irrelevant.
Yeah.
What a choice.
I
You
agree
can't
with
have
you.
everything.
I
Yeah.
agree
And
with you
so
with
we
that.
spend the middle of the season where everyone is having time sorting out their personal feelings instead of dealing with David Robert Jones.
Yeah. And those did come into conflict, when we have those episodes where those are the two big story arcs, and some people want one and some people want the other, or some people want a little bit of both, and it was difficult at times to how they had to balance both of those. Well,
Managed to have my favorite episode and my least favorite within 1 month of each other.
yeah.
The pendulum swings.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into these, and this is great conversation. I've very much enjoyed this water cooler style. We've got to trudge forward here so we can get through these. Be respectful of everyone's time here tonight. So we're gonna. I never did play the music, but that's okay. We won't play the music. Let's just get into it. The first episode we're going to talk about tonight is the season 4 premiere. Neither here nor there. The synopsis from our friends over at FringePedia.net says, a week after Peter Bishop is wiped from existence, the truce between the two worlds remains intact, and sides are forced to work together. Agent Lee helps investigate a shapeshifter case that is personal to him. The observers realize that their plan to fix the timeline was not perfect. This was written by Akiva Goldsman, Joel Wyman, and Jeff Pinkner, and directed by Joe Chappelle. All right, so let's get it kicked off tonight, and Allan, I'm going to let you take it first.
Okay. Right. So there's one line that caught my attention from December, which is he said that it is, as it has always been, our responsibility to ensure events play out as they were intended before your intervention. So again, you don't really know if the events that they're talking about are the events trying to prevent the bad observers invasion, or are they talking about trying to prevent that invasion? Yeah, so we don't know what's the events that they have to ensure that that has to play out in the future.
Right. And maybe that'll become more clear after season 5, after we see the invasion and how that unfolds. So
the main question here is whether if the existence of Peter is actually relevant in season 5, which I think there is a relevance. And then you also have this back and forth Olivia and Folivia, and Olivia said, Folivia said that Olivia has like hard time of making connection with others, which we actually had we felt like Olivia is so different. He's so emotionally disconnected with other people, in comparison to Lincoln Lee, who's actually very much connected emotionally to the case. So it actually brings back a season 1, episode 1 feel that Lincoln Lee is the Olivia of season 1. So it's just that they did play out very well with this feeling and atmosphere of the premiere of season 4 with the premiere of season 1. We have the crazy and unstable Walter, which again reminiscent of the season 1 Walter, and also we see Walter reanimating the dove, which I think is like a foreshadowing of him trying to reanimate Olivia in the end of the season.
Okay.
So that's all I got.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I had a different take on the dove, but I'll mention when it gets around back over to me. But yeah, and I do. There's definitely some similarities between John Scott and what we saw here with Lincoln's partner, particularly the way they looked with the skin. And Olivia even said so much that it looked very much the same, but it was different. So I can definitely see some parallels there. All right. John?
One of the things I do remember is in the dialogue, they mentioned that she had also gotten Walter out of the institute or the insane asylum to try to save her, John Scott, only he wasn't able to, which I'm sure that has something to do with Peter had to be there. He had to be the extra element that made that successful. I can't remember too much about this episode, come to think of it. I just remember a lot of dialogue all over again. Maybe they were trying to re-entrain the audience.
They are actually good with trying to set the universe of Fringe for new viewers for these 5 episodes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you are a newbie, you'll still get what's Fringe about by just watching these 5 episodes.
Yeah, that's right.
Was this when they moved to Friday nights too?
No, that had been done the previous season.
Okay, so they don't have that excuse.
Right.
I think they always do this. Like, for 5 episodes of the season, they always introduce what's Fringe about.
You
have that idea. Feeling?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think I remember once reading that their intent was for people to be able to pick up the show starting with any season.
Exactly.
That's clever. Well, Brandon, what do you have to say?
Between this and the pilot episode of the show, I also realized that if you take out the skin translucency effect and substitute in the rooftop chase, you also have the pilot episode of the television show Alcatraz.
That's right.
In which one person has their partner getting killed after a chase scene, and they end up joining a group which investigates some rather unusual things.
I think that's a J.J. Abrams thing.
So are you implying he has a formula?
Well, that's also Alias.
Yes.
In the pilot episode, what's her name? I can't remember her name.
Anna?
The main girl in Alias.
Oh.
Her fiancé was killed in the pilot episode.
Jennifer Garner,
yeah.
Right.
Her fiancé
That's as
was
close as
killed.
I can get.
That was the actress.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Something.
I saw many references to food within this episode. For example, Lincoln's partner Robert is eating toast, which Lincoln blames on letting bad guys get away because it causes chaos, and Robert spends way too much time with the toaster. Mm-hmm. Walter also makes some popcorn, is disappointed that Lincoln didn't bring him any candy, specifically gumdrops, and has some sort of wet drink before going to bed. There was something that I thought was food, but actually turned out to be a dead bird, which Walter removed from the refrigerator. There was a very interesting quote by September in the beginning of the episode. The timeline has been rewritten. He was erased, and yet traces of him continued to bleed through.
Right.
Therefore rendering the entire argument about timeline versus universe invalid.
Yeah.
The answer was right there within the first 3 episodes of the season premiere, and none of us paid attention.
That's right. I caught that too. Could have saved myself some bananas if I'd paid attention.
As with each new season, we saw some new words within the opening credits. Some of them stood out to me, such as time paradox, which happened at the end of season 3, where Walter sent back the machine because he had already done so. Quantum entanglement, which could refer to the typewriters, or, to some extent, the Cortex fan subjects at the end of season 4. Mm-hmm. Existence, which I'm not really sure how you would prove or disprove this. And the ethereal plane, which J.J. Abrams will no doubt attempt to crash in season 5.
Yeah.
Party crasher.
There is another quote in which Olivia says, well, sometimes answers lead to more questions, which is the official Fringe motto.
Yeah.
To check under a dome where he is growing an ear, which reminds me of, I believe it was a season 2 episode where Walter is growing an ear inside of an omelet.
Yep, and it was the episode where Peter almost ate the omelette.
Yeah.
Indeed. The glimmers of Peter in the background throughout the episode reminded me of the flashes of Tyler Durden in the movie Fight Club.
Yes, it did. That's a movie I've seen, by the way. Did a podcast on it even.
It was mentioned that the patterns of the killings are centered around a commuter line, once again proving that no mode of transportation is ever safe within this television show.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
When Lincoln Lee crosses over to the Redverse, he puts his hand on a hand scanner, which, as he leaves the room, displays a...
Yep.
A hand is also one of the glyphs, although Lincoln's has the traditional 5 fingers instead of 6.
Right.
I believe that is all I have for now. I have several additional points that I may come back to by the end, if I choose so.
Okay.
Also, I just want to make a point that we have to take note that the shapeshifter was actually different. It is in this timeline. So the shapeshifter, or actually, there's the new breed of shapeshifter,
right.
And they had this thing on their wrist,
right,
which is able to replace the tech that was before with the shapeshifters before,
right. The soft
and also
device.
yeah,
The prompts
and
in
it also right.
I didn't. What was that? You cut out there.
Yeah, it can also emit fire, which the
Sure.
shapeshifter used to burn out the files.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
Yep.
I'm coming back to that later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had a couple of notes here, and I noticed also that they said it was a rewritten timeline, something I wish I had picked up on the first time around. There was a lot of imagery and symbolism that I saw in this episode, kind of setting some of the framework for what we're going to see this season, which made a whole lot more sense to me after, kind of through the rewatch. The bird, for example, it was seemingly alive, and then it was gone. And, I think you can take that a couple of different ways. The way I took it was that, for a moment, Peter seemed to be alive again. This is, thinking back to what the events we saw in this timeline or learned about in the timeline rather. But then he was gone again, and Walter even says, I think it was in this episode, sometimes people die twice. So I kind of thought that might be symbolic of Peter was dead, alive again, and then wasn't really alive. He was dead again. This whole idea of, and so there was some good quotes in this, and I think we caught them the first time through, but they just meant so much more this time through. People wondering their whole lives what happened to their loved ones. Can you imagine what it would be like to have that hole in your life? Definitely a very important line. Nothing sadder than when two people are meant to be together and something intervenes. And Olivia mentions that she's had a hole in her life for as long as she can remember. And just really all those quotes are very powerful. And when you think about the power of love that brought Peter back into existence, that connected him with Olivia and Walter, and was able to reach through and bring him back. And we'll learn that in the episode, A Short Story About Love, that it was the love that brought him back. And so when you put that in contrast with these 3 quotes about emptiness and loss and a hole in your life, well, then it really stands as a very powerful clue as to what it is at work here that's bringing Peter back through the timeline. So those are some of the notes that I had on the episode. You guys have any other thoughts before we move on to episode 2?
If Clint were here, he would have burst out into song.
The power of love. Go ahead, Brandon. We'd love to hear how an observer sings The Power of Love by Huey Lewis.
As would I.
All right.
Would you like to volunteer?
No, I'm volunteering you.
September does sort of look like a lounge lizard.
I could see him. Well, Michael Service is a very talented musician and singer. So he
should do an album.
Yeah, he could do it. All right, any other thoughts?
I interpreted the bird as something differently. I thought that it was a reference back to the episode Brown Betty, in which the Walter in the story had singing corpses, which he brought back to life in order to create music.
Clever. Not sure if it's right, but clever.
I also noted that the victims were suffering from heavy metal poison-related diseases, similar to how the old shapeshifters had mercury in their blood.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, why did they make that connection? What? I didn't understand that. They didn't. They
didn't
failed
have
to make.
to. Yeah.
You mean what was the purpose in the plot?
No. The characters like Olivia, Walter, and Broyles. They didn't make that connection. Like, oh yeah, we have shapeshifters before.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah. All right.
I would point out that they didn't seem to know as much about the shapeshifters without Peter.
Right.
But in episode 5, Broyles does point out that the mercury-bleeding shapeshifters were the old variety. So
that's right. So
I'm
they
not
definitely
sure.
had those. Yeah. Good point. All right. Let's move on to episode 2. Well, the glyphs for episode 401 spelled appear. And the clue was when Olivia and Lincoln are chasing the shapeshifters down through the train yard, the graffiti on one of those cars said brain freeze. And brain freeze gives us a clue to episode 402. The serial killer kills his victims by freezing their brains. The synopsis is the victims of a highly intelligent serial killer stack up, and both Fringe teams join in an effort to capture the culprit. Reluctantly, Olivia deploys to the alternate universe with a forensic psychologist that knows the killer all too well. Walter slumps emotionally as the haunting images he recently experienced begin to talk to him. This was written by Monica Owusu-Breen and Alison Skapker, and directed by Brad Anderson. And John, you are up.
Yikes. Okay. One of the things that struck me was they kept playing with Olivia's red hair. You know, she's from the Red Universe, and I kept thinking, isn't that a bit over the top? You know, just let it go. I think we all agreed in the previous podcast that the actor who played the serial killer in this was just outstanding.
Yes.
And I kept getting an urge for a Slurpee every time they mentioned brain freeze.
That's hilarious. That would have been funny if Walter would have asked to go out for, some slushos or something.
Maybe they thought that was too over the top.
Maybe so.
Yes.
At the very end, when they finally figured out he had extracted the bad character, he eventually committed, harakiri with his own gun, and he figured out that the other guy was good. And we got that memorable quote from Broyles about, like, some people leave an indelible impression upon your soul.
Right.
I think they're working up to kind of justify when Olivia literally plucks Peter from the ether and brings him back into reality. I think that really ties in nicely at the end of the season when she's got her memories back and we're going like, how did she do that? Now, that also made me think, in the very first episode, when Walter is seeing Peter, but he doesn't remember him,
mm-hmm.
Walter is haunted by his memories of Peter, but he doesn't know what to do with them or how to gel them like Olivia eventually does. So it might be another example of where several people Peter has touched, the memories come back, but they react differently to them. That's all I got.
Yeah, I think that's possible. And Olivia had the Cortexa fan that was what was able to help her kind of bridge that gap. So,
Good point.
Where Walter did not. Although he self-medicated a lot, but we don't. As far as we know, he never self-medicated with cortexiphan. All right, Brandon.
I had two major problems with Season 4 in general. The first of which was all the time that was spent solving personal problems instead of hunting David Robert Jones, and the second of which was that they didn't do nearly enough with the bridge between universes. Mm-hmm. That being said, I absolutely love what they did this episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was rather unique themselves, especially the small differences between the two of them, where one version of McClellan was a serial killer and the other hunted serial killers. This also reminded me of later in the episode, or later in the season, where Lincoln Lee is talking to Lincoln Lee, reminiscing about their lives, and the only difference that we were able to see is when one of them met Olivia, seeing the in terms of influencing someone's life. Which is why one of them joined Fringe Division years ago, and the other only just recently.
Yeah.
In terms of food in this episode, apparently in the past, Olivia brought Walter some Portuguese sweetbread.
Yes.
At the gas station, the killer is sipping a hot beverage, which I am assuming is tea. And that is all the food I have for this episode. I noticed that Broyles, I don't know why I singularized his name. Broyles mentioned that there had been 23 victims, and Olivia looks at a picture with the number 42 on it, both of which are numbers from the TV show Lost.
Good catch.
Walter gives Lincoln the nickname Kennedy.
Yes.
Great.
And there were several connections to other episodes within the series. The aspect of the killer of his victims' brains while freezing them reminded me of the episode Bad Dreams, where a killer was feeding off of people's dreams and using them as a drug.
Yep.
Or also the episode A Short Story About Love, in which the killer was using pheromones of his victims in order to seduce other people.
Mm-hmm.
Also tying into gray matters, at the end of the episode, the killer removes the peaceful part of the professor's brain, which is an interesting part of Walter's brain, in order to prevent him from becoming too dark.
Right.
I really liked the scene after Olivia had brought McClellan over to the Redverse, and you see both of the Olivias standing right next to each other. Even while dressed the same, Anatov did an excellent job of making each character uniquely distinct.
Yeah.
Going back to the quote that Broyles said at the end of the episode, I've always thought there... I don't know if that... I typed this wrong. Anyway, people who leave a mark on your soul, an imprint can never be erased. Mm-hmm. In my mind, that helps justify how Peter was loved back into existence, even if I still hate the explanation.
Yep.
I have a couple more things that I will save for the end in case anybody else covers them.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for that. All right, Allan?
Have much in this episode, but I did enjoy this episode anyway. So I got only one question.
Okay.
What is the reason why, civilians can't find out the alternate universe?
Sort of like Stargate, this side versus that side, the difference.
But we are already working with the other side, so I don't understand that.
People may try to find a way to cross over in order to exploit the other side in some way, therefore causing more problems.
That's what I was thinking.
Immigration. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, it's like, it's just, I felt like, I think I'm coming from the scientific view.
Okay.
That if I'm actually teaching a class about the possibility of existence of an alternate universe, it's going to be mind-blowing for me because it's real. It's not a theory anymore. So I actually need to know that. I felt like I have the right to know that.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be plenty of people who deny the possibility regardless of evidence. So it's going to be controversial.
it's just something like, okay, we have the planet Mars, and then you're telling me that the planet Mars, okay, you're not telling me whether it's existing or not, but it is existing.
If you put a cat in a box, it is both alive or dead until you open it.
Maybe we should have
But
picked
then-
on Pluto, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, people can decide, or can find out how to get to Mars and exploit Mars, but they never do that.
I think China's announced they're going to be going.
Yeah, but and what's wrong with that?
Well, I think you have a very distinct difference here, and that is going to Mars doesn't necessarily have a negative impact on Earth. If someone wants to go to Mars and has the ability to do that, go have a good time. But telling other people about the other universe and opening up the possibility for people to want to go over to that other universe, find ways to get over there, exploit that could be very detrimental to both universes and cause the ultimate destruction of both universes. Therefore, you want to, not make that public information.
You might start punching holes through the barrier between the universes.
Yeah.
That is how the war started in the first place.
Right. Besides, it's going to drive, weird scientists batty here in Earth. So, I mean, that's like a win for everybody.
If you have the right to know that an alternate universe exists, do you not also have the right to discover it for yourself without being told?
No.
It's a good question, Zero. That's my response to it.
Right.
All right. Any other thoughts from you, Allan?
Nope.
All right. I've got a couple here. Let's see. I'm trying to put these back into context here. Oh, yes. Okay. So we learn that firing up the machine and creating the bridge, which is what happened, was not their intent, the Red versus intent. Their intent, what they expected, was for the world to be destroyed. And the reason I wrote this down is because it gives us a little bit of an answer that we kept asking all season, and that was, what did they think happened? How did they think the machine got started up and all that stuff? And we still don't know the answer to how they fired up the machine, if the machine was, genetically coded to only work with Peter. Now, I think we know that Peter actually started the machine and then disappeared and created this new timeline. But how do they think the machine started? And I still don't think we got an answer to that. But we do know that what their intent was, they expected it to destroy the universe, the blue universe, but instead what it did was create the bridge. And so we got a little bit of an insight there as to actually what did happen. That I had kind of glossed over the first time through. I think we did mention this last time, and that was the orange drink that they gave John before they took him over to the Redverse. Was kind of it kind of reminded me of the orange drink they would give people when they took him to Lost Island on Lost, like they gave it to Juliet. So
Tang?
kind of looked kind of like Tang. In John's vision, we saw him have a couple of flashbacks back to when he was a kid. We saw daisies, and we definitely saw a very good-looking apple cut right in half through the core with the two seeds, just like we've seen on the apple glyph. So that was very, very cool to see that. And then the two things that you guys have already talked about, that comment about an indelible mark on your soul, definitely ties into to the point that they were trying to make this season about how Peter came back into existence. And they quote that he knows what she taught him, but he can't remember who she is. And that's very much what we see happening here. And we'll see, with as the season goes on and Olivia takes on the memories of the previous timeline, Olivia, and allows her memories to be overwritten. And we got a little hint of that this week with John, and he kind of took some of those memories from the other John and replace them, into his own brain. And so that also gave us a little bit of a clue as to the direction that they were going during season 4. All right, that's what I have. You guys have anything else?
I have a couple of things.
All right, go ahead, Brandon.
When the characters went over to the red verse, the light scanning them was red, and then green, which was a reverse of the typical green, 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 red.
Okay, I like that.
We also got some hints as to the differences in the timelines between this and the first 3 seasons. For example, Olivia seems to still be with Frank because she makes a comment that Frank likes red hair, right. Whereas in the old universe, old timeline, Frank left after Olivia became pregnant with Peter's child.
Right.
Charlie has also gotten married to Bug Lady, and we learned that in this timeline, Olivia killed her stepfather.
Right. Yep, all good points. Very good.
That's all I have.
All right, good. Thank you, Brandon.
Just one point. I think it's in this episode that Peter was trying to ask for help from Walter.
Right.
And again, it's one of the questions we are trying to find out why Peter is asking for help from Walter, and when Walter, when Walter asks Peter in the next few episodes, or something like that. So hopefully we'll get an answer in season 5 with that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that as I was watching it back through today, and because Peter said that wasn't him doing that, so then who was it, or how did that happen? And I meant to go back and read the comics I've got sitting over here where Peter's traveling through time with Sam Weiss and the Observer, but I just never got around to it. But that's a question that I'm still wondering too. What was the point if that wasn't Peter? I don't get it.
It may have been a subconscious effort.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think that's correct, Brandon.
Okay. Good stuff. All right, let's move on. The glyphs in this episode spelled Limbus, and the clue when they visit. I'm not sure if it was John the professor's house or his office, rather, if it was John the serial killer's house, but one of them had a book on their bookshelf called Killer Mindscapes by S. Pores.
The professor.
The professor had it?
Yeah.
And so S, first initial S, last name Pores, you put those together, you get Spores, which is our clue for the next episode, Alone in the World. I know, isn't that terrible? Alone in the World.
Grown.
2 young bullies are found dead and have rotted to an advanced state of decomposition less than a day after disappearing. The team discovers an amorphous entity that refuses to be regulated. Walter's frail mental state is bolstered when he befriends the timid target of the bullies. This was written by David Fury. Love his stuff. Directed by Miguel Sapochnik. And we're going to kick this one off with Brandon.
There is a fungus among us.
Somebody had to say it.
Is someone's phone ringing?
Yes, I heard a phone.
I noticed that there was throughout this episode.
I'm sorry, you cut out there. Could you repeat that?
I noticed that there were lots of people checking in with other people throughout this episode.
Okay.
It opens up with the doctor checking in to see how Walter is doing.
Mm-hmm.
In the next scene, Olivia checks in with Lincoln to see how he is adjusting. And a couple scenes after that, Broyles checks in with Walter to see how he is doing as a result of the doctor checking in with Walter to see how he was doing. It becomes a common theme. I believe that John Noble did an excellent job of going crazy in this episode.
Yes.
But I am glad that they resolved this thread quickly. Despite the good acting, I believe I would not have been able to watch this for an entire season, as it was rather emotional.
Yeah.
Looking at Aaron's drawing, I believe I saw the words, "I wonder if I wish my birthday would be just how I dreamed." I'm not quite sure what that means, but it was interesting.
Yeah, that is odd.
We once again see the artistic talents of Olivia as she is drawing Peter's face. We saw her draw Mr. X back in the episode LSD.
Right.
And we also see an episode later in this season related to art, Forced Perspective. I was intrigued by the entrance of Walter halfway through the episode, where Olivia said that there was nothing scary about them, and he walks through absolutely covered in blood.
Yes.
For food, there were strawberry milkshakes.
Mm-hmm.
And while soaking Aaron in ice water, Walter has a craving for grape popsicles.
Right.
And at the end of the episode, Walter tells Aaron, "We'll see each other again soon. I promise." And with that, Aaron leaves the room, never to be seen again.
And I remember talking about that at the time, going, don't throw that out there if you don't intend to get back to it. And they never did. I'm not happy about that.
But I think they did.
How?
He was planning a lobotomy. He was going to...
He was going to what?
He was going to see him in the hospital really soon.
No, I don't think that counts.
I don't think he was going to see anybody after the eye injury.
Myopathy.
Yeah. All right, what else, Brandon?
Relating to that, the tool that Walter is using reminds me of the letter opener he later uses to remove a bullet from Olivia's brain in the season.
Yeah, I could see that.
Oh, those prop masters. They never let anything go, do they?
No. The only other thought that I had was a line where Broyle said, "I'm sorry, but you know as well as I do we can't sacrifice countless other lives to save one boy."
Yeah.
Which is a possible reference to Peter's sacrifice at the end of Season 3, where he saves countless other lives.
Yeah, I took it more as a parallel to what they did do to got him in this mess in the first place. They tried to save one boy and screwed up two universes.
It also reminded me of the episode of Human Action, where they're trying to find this kid who kidnapped Peter, and they were saying like, "Oh, I think Broyle sent out like military force or something like that," and then Olivia said, "No, we can't do that. It's like he's a boy or something like that." So, and then there's some sort of a comment about, we can't sacrifice the safety of a lot of people for the sake of one.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's true. Okay, what else, Brandon?
Overall, I didn't enjoy this episode very much. I thought the most interesting Peter died because September didn't save his life in the pond.
Yeah.
Which puts some perspective as to how he never existed and sparked the interesting debate as to why he didn't just go back and prevent September's interference in the lab in the first place.
Yeah. Okay.
But we talked about that earlier.
Right.
That is all.
All right. Allan?
Yeah, I did enjoy this episode.
You would, being the scientist you are.
First 5 episodes, so I really love the first 5 episodes.
Yeah.
And I think Aaron is a lovable character. I just made a connection with him, and well, in fact, the whole theme of this episode is connections. Like Olivia trying to make connections with Lincoln, Walter trying to make connections with Aaron, and then Aaron making a connection with Gus.
Right.
So this whole theme about connection is an important theme of the episode, and I just find that interesting, and in this episode it made the point that Peter was not there, and they're trying their best to make connections of what they have at that moment.
Right.
So hopefully they could get over with their life. That's all I have.
Yeah. Okay, I'll comment on that in just a minute. I think you're right, though. All right, John?
Well, the one thing I can remember, great child acting, by the way.
Yeah.
But I remember this kid delivering this line when he goes to, after Walter's told him what he's been through, the kid goes, "And you don't think you belong in a mental institution?" I mean,
Yes.
That was great delivery.
Yes.
But I think y'all covered everything else really well.
Yeah, and I think so too, John. I don't have much either because they covered what I had. I wasn't real... this will never go down as one of my favorite episodes, I guess is what I'm trying to say. it did give us the whole idea where this kid, Aaron, and this fungus, Gus, have this mental connection that is so strong that it is, both of their lives depend on each other, and they're fulfilled through that connection. And that's the theme that made this episode relevant to the whole season, and again has to pay off in a short story about love when we learn that it was the power of love and that connection that brought Peter back, and it is his timeline. So, again, all these first 4 episodes are really establishing what it is that the whole story is going to be when revealed in its entirety through the season. And so these are really nice establishing episodes. Still very much though a monster of the week. We never see Aaron again. So aside from that, laying the groundwork for that theme, the only other thing that I really enjoyed about this episode was the connection that Walter had with Aaron. I thought Aaron did a great job too also, or the boy that played him. But it was really, really cool to see him just almost immediately be able to break down Walter's walls, and they really had a good time, and they developed a really strong bond. And that's what Walter wanted with his boy. And so for a moment, he got to pretend what it might have been like to have been a father to a little boy. And I know he got some time with his little boy, before Peter died. But this must have been a very rewarding moment for him to be able to experience some of that again. And
this was where Walter called him Peter, too.
That's right. Exactly. A good point. So, I like that. I like that Walter did get that experience with him. Because remember, this Walter did not get to see Peter grow to be a man. But this little bit that he got with Aaron, helps a little bit, just a little bit, not much, with me being upset that Walter lost all those memories and all those experiences, that they're gone for him from his perspective. Only Olivia got her memories back. So he's got this little bit, and that helps a little bit, but not much. All right, that's what I have. You guys have any other thoughts before we move on?
I think David Fury did tweeted about having a lot of deleted scenes in this episode.
Okay.
If I remember it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember it correctly. I hope it actually ended up in a DVD or in Blu-ray, so
yeah,
we'll get to see what's happening in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Perhaps in the future, Aaron will team up with the bald kid from Inner Child.
Perhaps.
It would be so funny when you actually find out that the whole season 1 to season 4 characters back again in season 5.
Oh, yeah.
Why are there so many loose ends involving children?
Yeah.
Because the children grow up on real life and they can't bring them back. They don't look the same.
Yeah, that's true.
But time has also passed in the show.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, look, we saw this person 1 year ago, and they seem 1 year older.
Says the guy who sees through time.
They should look older anyway. It's like 2036.
Yes, they should. If in season 5, you mean?
Point.
All right. Let's see. The glyphs in this episode spelled reborn, and the clue in Walter's lab, there was a book called Astral Projections, or a book about astral projections. I'm not sure which obviously ties in heavily to what we see in the next episode, episode 4 of season 4, Subject 9. The synopsis is Olivia is confronted by a dangerous apparition, and a fellow Cortexiphan test subject appears to be the cause. Walter leaves the lab for the first time in years to show he is not insane and to avoid being reinstitutionalized. The powerful apparition is neutralized and surfaces in Raiden Lake. This was written by Joel Wyman and Jeff Pinkner and Akiva Goldsman and directed by Joe Chappelle. And Allan, we're back up at you.
Okay. Right. Oh, yeah. So, there's one line that was delivered by Cameron, which I think is a very significant point, which is let me check if I can find the line. Oh, there it is. So he said, "Just what you did to me. If you had given me some special power, that would be one thing. Maybe I'd be special, or at least I'll be useful. Or if you just left me alone, I could have been normal, have a normal life with normal friends. But instead, I'm neither. I'm just a freak."
Right.
So I think this summarizes the difference between this timeline and the one from season 1 to season 3.
Okay.
Because we do see a lot of Cortexiphan kids who grew up to be special than the others, and they even help Walter to cross over to the alternate universe. But in this timeline, we didn't. They actually made a point that because Walter abandoned the project halfway because Peter was already dead, and there's no triggering point of him trying to bring Peter back to the alternate universe, and therefore all these Cortexiphan kids are half baked. So they're just presumably they didn't really develop much ability, and then ended up not being seen as case of the week in this timeline. And somehow this also reflects to this Olivia in this timeline. She is also half-baked. She's not as special as our Olivia in the previous timeline. And again, that makes an impact in the later episodes, wherein because and this timeline Olivia was able to make connection with the previous timeline Olivia. So so basically it makes this timeline Olivia more of the Olivia that we know of and love of because of the traces of the Cortexiphan. And I think that's all I have.
Okay. Let me ask you this then, regarding the Cortexiphan kids being, freaks, underdeveloped or undeveloped freaks. We see in the episode Worlds Apart, which is where Jones uses the Cortexiphan kids to start to, destroy the two universes and to kind of communicate across worlds. Did Jones do something to make those Cortexiphan kids have the abilities they needed to do that, or did they have those Cortexiphan abilities as a result of Walter and Bell's experimentations?
Or presumably David Robert Jones probably sort of activated these kids.
He definitely activated them. Mm-hmm.
And maybe pump more Cortexiphan. I don't really know, but I do think at this point of the storytelling, that's probably what they're trying to make a point.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and I don't remember off the top of my head if they said outrightly that Jones, helped hone their abilities. I think they might have. But if not, that's the way I would lean, is that Jones took these kids who had these abilities but weren't fully developed because they weren't fully realized as children up to their potential. And he was able to do that and take them to the next level and then activate them and use them. And that would be why they were willing to, do these things for him, because he had fixed them.
Yeah. And I think in that episode they did mention about Jones as being a kind person, something like that.
Okay, maybe so.
Who took them in or something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
I can't remember, but it was something on that line.
Okay, we'll have to remember that when we get to that episode. That's definitely in the back half. I want to say that's like 4 or 5 episodes from the end. So that'll be probably the last podcast we do. But
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that was 3 from the end, maybe?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Yeah, I think it was after 419. Okay. Okay, let's move on to John. You're up next. What do you think, John?
Okay. Well, let's see. I remember Cameron Johns wasn't actually the character. How his father had enrolled him in the Cortex-Pan trials under his name, and his name was Cameron Johns.
Right.
And he said after that, who would want to share a name with the man who would do that to you? So his name was actually Mark Hilson. He also related a story where he was having a date and after the Cortex-Pan trials, and his stress levels went up or something like that, and he pulled all the fillings out of his date, out of her mouth. That sounds kind of gruesome.
It does, doesn't it?
This is also the phenomenal episode where Walter freaks out in the Best Western. You know, he's going nuts. One of the best scenes ever.
Yeah.
Somehow I don't see how that exactly fits in this episode, but it was great because then they also had the shakes at the diner.
Yes.
And then the apparition comes after Olivia again. I noticed how she handled that with the follow-up investigators. She flashed her Fringe Division ID, and that reminded me that ever since the transition to this timeline, they didn't just go – they weren't FBI. Event 1, that's when Broyles asked them to join Fringe Division. So there was no FBI phase. Walter also was the one who came up with the plot to use Mark's power to disperse the apparition. He wanted to shatter it, to destroy it. But of course, Olivia intervened, and then she materialized Peter in Raiden Lake. And ironically, he also doesn't have any memory of events since he activated the machine. So this whole episode is all about memories going on vacation or something.
Yeah, hang on. Did Olivia materialize Peter in Raiden Lake?
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, Walter's idea was to combine Mark's powers to actually do something to the apparition. But Olivia was the one who jumped in the way, or basically she said, Mark, stop it. Stop doing it. This is something else, because she recognized the face in the apparition.
Oh, right. All right.
Which ties into something a little bit later, rather than common sense or reason in making her decisions. He says there will be consequences.
Okay.
And, yeah. Then Mark mentions a little story about like when his powers were first, well, I don't know if you call them powers, but when his abilities started manifesting themselves, at first he thought something was happening to him, that somebody was doing something to him. But he was telling Olivia, but I figured it out. I was doing it to myself, which might entirely explain I kind of think that it's the Ghostbusters scene with Olivia's apparition floating above her bed.
Yes.
Which just kind of really reminded me of the Forbidden Planet id ego, the ID ego, you know. So in a way, Mark's explanation sets her up to believe perhaps all of these events that have been happening to her were done by her. She's trying to process those memories that are coming back. And that was the impetus for her to materialize Peter. So it sort of explains everything.
Yeah, I could go for that. You know, particularly
since
all I got. She was dreaming about Peter, so that might have been the moments when her brain was most actively thinking about Peter, even though her consciousness wasn't quite aware of it. Maybe that helped him locate her, and then once he had located her, it was a matter of breaking through and getting that connection strong enough to break through.
You know, I thought that too at first, but I kind of think not now. Okay. Because the reason why is because Peter has no memories of that apparition form. Okay. You know, because he also challenged Walter challenged him after he came back. He said, like, don't you remember doing these things? Right. He's like, no, I don't remember any of that. So I think it was really a manifestation of what was in Olivia's mind, just like we saw on LSD and some of the other episodes. It's how do people process their own memories and what do they do to themselves with them? Okay. There we go.
All right. Brandon?
Going back to the comment about the various... I had a theory about the end of the events of Season 2.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Could you say that again?
I'm sorry, too. I had a theory about the events at the end of Season 2, since Olivia said she didn't know any of the children from the trials. This means that she obviously didn't cross over to the Redverse at the end using their help. Or, possibility, didn't intentionally cross over at all, since there was no need to go rescue Peter since he didn't exist.
Right.
And she killed her father instead.
Right.
But that was in this universe. There was no need to cross over in order to do that. Instead, I would guess that Folivia crossed over to this side in order to kidnap her in the season 2 finale. In terms of food, we see lots of references in this episode. Walter uses peanuts for an experiment, although Astrid convinced him not to use shrimp. Interestingly enough, this reminded me of in season 2, where Walter was attempting to maneuver the universe by using a frog. Walter is seen eating a Pop-Tart. There are food remnants, in which Walter's hotel room comes with complimentary chocolate stains on the desk and strawberry juice on the carpet. Walter and Olivia enjoy root beer floats. There is what I considered anti-food, because Walter isn't interested in the soup that a medical person offers him. And as a child, Cameron suffered from an irrational hatred.
That's right. Was it raisin toast? Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
He asked Walter, "Have you ever eaten raisin toast?" Which regretfully he didn't respond.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine him not, though.
Deja vu happened several times in this episode.
Yes.
As an interesting side note, Walter watched the episode The Matrix the previous night, and deja vu in The Matrix is a sign that something is being altered.
Right.
In this episode, the timeline is being altered, as, at the end, Peter returns after it not existing.
That's a good point. I didn't put it in that context. I put it in the context that the show has put it in, which is where you belong, right? Isn't that what they said? And Peter says, "I've never had deja vu."
Yeah.
But I like your point there, Brandon. That's interesting.
We learned that Walter hasn't left the lab in 3 years, which, in this timeline, would mean that once he left St. Clair's in the pilot episode, he stayed in the lab for the entire previous seasons. Astrid is given the nickname Claire, which she finds absolutely ridiculous because it doesn't even start with the letter A.
Right.
I noticed that when the apparition appears in the restaurant, there are 2 Statue of Liberty posters in the background, which may be a reference to the Red verse, where Walternate is based on Liberty Island. My notes.
Okay, good.
Oh,
okay.
I also thought it was interesting that at the end of the episode, Peter suddenly finds himself skinny dipping in Raiden Lake. This may be because since Peter never existed, this means that Peter's clothes also technically never existed.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I'm taking it they didn't film that part in the middle of winter in Vancouver.
But he did went into the machine.
Do what?
Peter did went into the machine fully clothed.
Fully clothed, yes.
He was doing the Steve Jobs thing.
Okay. I have a couple of notes. Literally just a couple here. One is that Bell theorized that Cortexophane kids would share a psychic link. And going back to the Worlds Apart episode that I mentioned in the discussion with Allan here a few minutes ago, that's exactly what we see them doing, if my memory serves correctly, is that they were able to have a psychic link with each other and with their counterparts in the other universe that allowed them to, bring about the destruction. So we'll see. That I'm a little foggy on that because I haven't watched that since it originally aired, but it seems like that theory that Bell had was indeed true. And then another thing I thought was very interesting in light of what we see Bell doing by the end of the season, and that is in that scene when they come to Nina at Massive Dynamic, and she says about nanotechnology, we create technology, how it is used is not our concern. And I remember talking about that line, back when we first saw this episode in terms of, gosh, there's a lot of weight in that line, that really is a lot of dark themes in that, we just want to create it and what people do, because we've seen Massive Dynamic behind so many of the dark things that have been done. But in light of what Bell does with the nanotechnology, that's how we see the X, that's been embedded inside of people. We see him partnering with David Robert Jones and Jones puts the nanites on the escalator handle and all that stuff. Well, that all pushes back to Bell, and here we're talking about nanotechnology, which are nanites in this sense, and they create it. They're not really concerned for how it's used, and in this case, by the end of the season, Bell's using it to try and destroy the world to create his own utopia, and I bet Nina probably has a problem with that, so maybe she needs to be a little bit more careful about what she says. All right, any other thoughts on subject 9?
Going back to your comment about nanotechnology, that was also one of the words in the season 1 credits.
Oh, was it really? Okay. Gosh, man, I haven't thought about those in forever. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
Also, when Walter leaves the lab in order to prove that he is capable of functioning, it reminded me of in the episode Snakehead when he decided to practice self-actualization.
That's right. That didn't work out so well. All right.
It didn't work out this time either.
No, it didn't. The glyphs in this episode spelled reset, and I could not figure out what the episode clue was for the next episode. And that next episode is called Novation, Season 4, Episode 5. The synopsis is, the body count builds as new human hybrid shapeshifters seek to perfect the technology that makes her possible. We're talking about a specific shapeshifter here. Former Master Dynamics scientist Dr. Malcolm Truss unwittingly contributes to the cause. Nina Sharp makes amends with Walter and encourages his effort to connect with Peter. This was written by Graham Rowland and J.R. Orsi and directed by Paul Holohan. Okay, let's see. We are up to John.
This one I won't have too much about except for the title. I pondered what it means for a long, long time, and I remember some really creative ideas when it first aired. Uh-huh. But I think the one that makes the most sense is, since that is the shapeshifters, or the new versions of them, it's probably originating from the word innovation. So instead of innovation, it's innovation. So beyond that, I haven't got very much.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think you're probably right. Okay, Brandon, what's up?
It's a Pixar film, but that is not important right now.
All right.
Peter's theme again in the score, and we in fact hear it several times during the opening scene and throughout the rest of the episode. Although these shapeshifters seem improved upon from the original ones from a technological standpoint, their programming could use a little work. In the first sequence where she shows up, this new shapeshifter doesn't seem to be very good at blending in or working efficiently.
Yeah, I thought that too.
I was rather intrigued that Malcolm Trust is first seen tending his garden in Eden, Vermont. Some possible symbolism for something there. I was rather interested that William Bell shut down the cellular replication program for ethical reasons. Just interesting considering how he relates to these new shapeshifters. They work for David Robert Jones, who works for Bell. Bell was also quoted as saying, "Some things are gods,"
right,
which is also something Carla Warren told Walter in the episode Peter.
Right.
However, once he becomes a god, he resurrects the project, as he is now worthy of working on it.
Okay. I have a different take on that, but I like that. It's funny.
In terms of food, Walter is making custard in his lab.
Mm-hmm.
And I was intrigued that Peter is using the same kind of laptop that I am using, a 15-inch MacBook. That is all.
Okay. Very good. I love your response to when I ask you what's up. Do you say that all the time? Yeah, is that like one you just have by the ready?
Yes.
Yeah, it sounded that way. That was good. All right, Allan, what are your thoughts on Novation?
Right. One of the lines Peter delivered, which I think it's it's really funny at that moment because mainly because everybody doubted who Peter is, and Peter was actually saying, "Oh, these shapeshifters are perfect infiltrators, and by transforming their DNA, they can become anyone. And if I was in that situation, and if I was Broyles, I'm actually going to freak out and probably kill Peter
Yeah.
because I don't know him,
Yeah.
and he can be, he was the one who's actually telling this. Plus, this whatever Peter said in this line is actually wrong. Again, if I going back to the premiere episode, we did see something on their wrist. So we can easily identify a shapeshifter using that identification. Hello?
Yeah, I'm
Hello?
here. It sounded like you
Yeah.
cut out just a little bit.
All right. So what I was saying is this line was really wrong because they are not a they can still easily be identified using the wrist technology. So
A lot of people
it's
wear
not
jewelry, so
Mm-hmm.
isn't it something it
Yeah.
might look like something?
saw it. It's like a hole in their wrist.
Yeah, that's a good point, Allan. I mean, that would be a tell that they're a shapeshifter. I mean, they definitely have something that's noticeable about the wrist. If they get one captive, they should be able to look at the wrist and see something is
Exactly.
different here. Yeah.
But they forgot about that.
Yeah.
They just say, we need to perform surgery to find those memory disks, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
How
Wrist.
Peter broke that down, what they were. He says like it's memories, it's objective, it's biologic functions.
Right.
Do they know about the wrist at this point?
Yes,
Or is that
Yeah.
just something
because
the audience...
Lincoln actually saw it.
Right. And
Remember
and,
in the first episode, they were he was telling Olivia that this shapeshifter is actually leaning down to his partner and trying to like suck the life out of him, something like that.
yeah.
That's
He
right.
saw it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think if Olivia saw it when he was burning those documents, but I think he caught him on fire with the wrist before she walked in.
Exactly, and they do have bodies of the shapeshifter.
That's right, they do. And they should. I mean, they've killed a few.
Exactly. So
Maybe they
yeah.
have the ability to hide it, similar to how the first version could hide their technology.
Yeah, but even then, I mean,
Hide
it left a mark behind. I'm with Zero on this thing. I think
They're
that's a
already
good point.
dead.
Yeah.
If you have Walter in there, he will easily identify that, there is a weird thing in their wrist.
But
I could
mean, in the living
identify.
ones,
Yeah.
you don't need to identify them much while they're dead, since they aren't a threat anymore at that point.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good point. I
Well,
guess.
if they have heavy metals in them, aren't they going to set off like an airplane?
It is never good to fly in this show. It is never a good idea to fly in this show anyway.
That's true. Yeah.
Aha! We got them now.
Yeah.
Don't board the ethereal plane.
yeah.
Lost kind of started us on that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so also in this episode, Walter finally saw Peter's eyes, and he kind of find out that, oh yeah, he is my boy. So again, this another recurring theme of the whole show, where Olivia tell Peter that, why can't you look at my eyes and see that I am the real Olivia, or
Mhm.
she is the fake Olivia. And then you also have an episode wherein Peter cross over to the alternate universe. What's her name? Oh my god. The wife of Walter?
Elizabeth?
Yeah, sorry. Elizabeth met Peter, and Elizabeth just know that he is Peter, that he is her son.
Yeah.
And again, in the last episode of the season, we have Pete Henrietta and know that she is his daughter.
Yeah.
So this is an important, recurring theme of the show. And I think it's funny that also that they dropped the line about that some things are not ours to tamper with, but some things are God's,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually supposedly from. But obviously, it's not. He is not really practicing what he actually preached, because at the end of the season we found out that he is actually trying to be godlike.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah, and my take on that, I mentioned earlier, was a little bit different, and was it John, I think, that said that he shelved it until he became a god, and then he took it off the shelf. And I think my just slightly different take on that is that he shelved it, but in other words, he took it from, what was the doctor's name in this episode?
Malcolm Trust.
Yeah, Truss, and but really it was so that he could develop it on his own, because he already had kind of an ulterior motive, even at the point where he took it from Dr. Truss. And I don't know that it matters.
Yeah.
Huh?
I agree with you.
Yeah. But I don't think it matters. I think the end result is the same, but that'd be my only slightly different take on that. Shut down the doctor so that he could, take on the project his own. I see at this point in the season, and I think based on our conversations that we've had up to this point, I think we all agree that the first four kind of go together, but beginning in this fifth episode, we see the season story arc begin to take a different turn. The first four kind of set up the idea of where is Peter, what has happened to Peter, and how is Peter going to return. Well, now with this episode, we got the return of Peter. So that phase of dreams and visions and hearing him and all of those weird things, that where they're moving away from that story and moving into now, where is he and how does he fit in here? Is this the place that he's supposed to be? And this is really going to carry us on through almost the entire season and tell a short story about love where we get the answer. He's where he's supposed to have been all along. But so we see a nice turn in the story arc in this particular episode. And also, as it wraps up that one side of the story arc, it opens up the next one, getting back into the shapeshifters, which is also going to carry us right into the reappearance and reemergence of David Robert Jones, which then gets us into the reappearance and reemergence of William Bell. And so some really cool storylines are going to come out of what we saw set forth in Novation. So it should be pretty cool. But that's it. I don't really have any notes on the episode itself other than just to make the observation on how the story is progressing for the season as a whole. Do you guys have any other thoughts on Novation?
What I don't understand
specifically.
Is, what I don't understand, William Bell shut down the project when, at the end of the day, he decided to actually send the shapeshifter to go back to Malcolm Truss and tweak the shapeshifter. Mm-hmm. When he can actually
he honestly took it covert. He didn't want it on the record.
Have you seen Christopher Nolan's Batman films?
Yes, all three of them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know what you're going to say. What are you?
No, I was going to mention about how all of the research for the technology that Bruce Wayne uses is all off the record, and that it is technically entirely closed down.
Okay.
But still technically being used.
Sure.
Okay. But he can actually just, recruit Malcolm Truss.
He could have, yeah.
He could have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't trust him for some reason.
Because of his surname.
We did see how found out about the truth. He tried to sabotage the experiment.
Right.
There was a possibility that if Bell let him know what was really going on, he may have had a similar reaction and destroyed the project.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
No, it's because he saw his wife.
Yeah, but he saw because what he envisioned for the project was that it would be able to cure diseases, not to do this other thing where you can shift into other people's bodies and become, representations and misrepresent people who, in this case, are dead. And so I think when he realized that's what was being done with it, he wanted to shut this thing down because it wasn't what he wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And Bell probably knew that, and therefore thought the only way to get him to fix the flawed design was to, try to fool him.
Yeah. Well, obviously, if it became commercialized and every covert weapon.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts? Someone said they had some thoughts, but not necessarily about Novation. Was that John?
Yeah. I was thinking there was another series called Babylon 5 written by, I forget what his name was, but he published
Straczynski.
Very good, JMS, yes. A number of years afterwards, he published some books on what he was thinking while he was writing those scripts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if there was one question I could ask Pinkner or Wyman, it would be if they would ever consider doing something like that, even if it was only self-published. What were you thinking when you were putting this together?
I think that would be fascinating, wouldn't it? That'd be so cool.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the one little bit of insight that Joel gave us at Comic-Con about White Tulip, and he didn't even share the whole story with us, but there's got to be countless other gems like that as to why they wrote all these stories or what inspired them. I would love that.
They move on to other projects, and it sort of leaves their brain cells to forget what they were thinking.
Yeah. It's a good idea. All right, anything else, guys?
I have a couple points.
Okay.
One of them is that Nina seems to have a really bad memory. It was only in this episode that I realized there have been many times in which they have gone to her for questions about something, and she was responded with, "That doesn't sound familiar. Let me look it up. Oh, wait, now I remember."
Yeah. I always
fallible memory.
Yeah, I think she needs to see what comes up on this computer screen so she can remember what she's able to share. I think
at what point Nina was replaced by Alt Nina?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, I don't think it's at this point, but that's a good question.
Was this where we got Viper from?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome, the Viper episode.
Yeah.
Because I doubted point she was replaced by the Alt Nina.
Yeah, I don't think
she
it was
couldn't.
Yet.
Wait, ignore me. Wrong thought.
Okay.
I was
heard
thinking
nothing.
that the other one was a shapeshifter, which would be before this technology happened. But then I remembered, no, that is not what happened. Moving on.
Yeah.
All right.
And also, I was wondering if the alternate universe also pay taxes.
Pays taxes?
Yeah.
Why does that matter?
Because apparently they're selling gas for 99 cents.
Oh. Yeah.
I did not notice that.
I did, and it's like, what are they, there's so many different things that it could have caused a difference, but probably just to make us all jealous.
That is why you cannot tell this universe about the other universe. People will travel to another universe for cheaper gas, using up that universe's resource.
There you go.
Uses out. Gas buddy's got him.
That's the reason why I actually asked if they pay taxes.
Brandon just figured it out. That's the true answer right there. All right.
I had one more point about this episode.
Okay, go ahead.
People in the chat room have been mentioning about Olivia's time slip at the end of the episode, where she is given papers twice.
Right.
I originally interpreted that as not exactly a slip in time, but rather a shapeshifter infiltrating the Fringe division.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Awesome. Great catch.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
I think it was real.
If someone were to assume the form of someone working within Fringe division, it would be very easy for them to gather information because they would have access to the files.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a double meaning.
I
think they intentionally put that to confuse us.
Well, it definitely did. But the only reason I don't think it's a shapeshifter is because the files were on the desk and then they weren't on the desks, and we never saw anybody.
The shapeshifter took them.
Yeah, but we never really saw anybody come behind her and get them. And maybe there was a camera angle change or something. But my thought was that it was kind of like an echo. You know, there's been this adjustment in the timeline, and so when Peter was breaking through, we saw the clock slip, and we saw it later on in the bathroom. There was a time slip, and there's still some kind of like a ripple in time. Like you throw a pebble into a pond, there's still some rippling, some adjustment being taken place there. So I just took it as that. It was just either a ripple or an echo, however you want to call it. That's all that it was. But I mean,
DVDs will tell.
I hope so, because we never got an answer to it. It was very, very strange, and they didn't have to put it in there, right?
Right. I bet they planned to work on it in the next episode or something, and they just...
Yeah, maybe.
Well, you can interpret it as that way, or it can also be something about the alternate universe, or it can be something about the alternate timeline, or anything else.
You think that someone from the Redverse slipped over to the Blueverse to give Olivia some paperwork?
That's what I thought. I thought something like that for sure.
Yeah.
You never know. I don't really know. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
It could be happening like that, because we saw something similar happen at the end of Subject 13, where young Olivia gave her drawings to alternate.
Exactly.
Right. Right. We did. And we saw Olivia slip between universes, you know, before in season 1, too.
It can
How
be
far
interpreted
in past...
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Allan. Please go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm already done.
All right, John, take it away.
Okay. I was just wondering, how far in the past was it that we saw the Redverse? Because I was thinking that she was still wearing the blonde wig the last time we saw her.
I couldn't answer that question.
2 episodes? 3.
Okay, so... Yeah, so we didn't have a Redverse episode in between those. So that could have been Olivia. She could have been doing some reconnaissance work or something.
I don't know.
Reconnaissance work in an office that she works in.
But it's on the other side. No, I hear you. I don't know. I don't know.
Did I get the verses mixed up again?
All right. Any other thoughts on Novation?
No.
All right.
No.
The glyphs spelled still, and I meant to look ahead to see. I guess I could real quick to see what the glyphs spell in the next one, because I'm thinking that was one that tied in, where 2 episodes had glyphs that only really fully made sense when you put them back to back like that. But I'll pull that up and we'll see. While that's pulling up, let me talk about the episodes that we're going to be watching next week, which will be And Those We Left Behind, Wallflower, Back to Where You've Never Been, Enemy of My Enemy, and Forced Perspective. So those are going to be a whole lot of fun, I think. You know, it's definitely interesting to go back and watch all of these episodes again and kind of put them into a fuller context and glean some additional meaning out of it. And that's the whole purpose of the rewatch, of course. The glyphs in the next episode are living, so still living. I think those do go together. So there you go.
I think you forgot to mention about the next episode's clue, because apparently there is when Nadine go into the locker to actually open up to get the portable typewriter.
Uh-huh.
The locker number was 47.
Right.
And 47 was the maximum time period of the time where Ray Green can, complete his equation.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I typically haven't been doing the clues at the end because we're not going to get to that episode till the next week, but I appreciate you doing that.
Spoiler warning.
Yeah.
Oh.
You ruined it. No, it's just I figure people will forget between the next episode, so that's why I don't normally throw them in there. But okay, let's move on to giving just some housekeeping stuff here before we get out of here for tonight. Remind you guys about the DVD release coming up on September the 4th. Our new Twitter name, which is the same if you've been subscribed. You don't have to do anything different. Just recognize that we are GSM Podcasts. And so be aware of that. Also, we've got the Revolution podcast, which has now been officially kicked off. We recorded our first episode of that. It is not yet, as of this recording, which is August the 25th, it is not yet available in its own feed in iTunes. It is in Zune, it is in Stitcher, it is in the BlackBerry, it's over on our website. It's everywhere you would want it to be except iTunes. We're still waiting on their approval. However, if you are subscribed to the GSM all-inclusive feed, then it is a part of that one, and you'll get it there. So just be aware of that. As soon as it's in iTunes in its own feed, which they have to approve, that's what we're waiting on. It's been submitted. But as soon as they approve it and it's involved or included in that, then we will let you guys know on Twitter and Facebook that it is available. And that's the Revolution Podcast. So check that out. There is another podcast out there called the Revolution Podcast, so make sure you're looking for the one by Golden Spiral Media. Our logo has the red kind of chipped paint revolution, big bold revolution right across the middle of it. It's got some vines growing on it. It says the Revolution Podcast. There's some grass growing, and then you see the planet Earth in the background. So that's the podcast logo to look for that. All right. If you want to give us a call on the Fringe phone, leave us some feedback. You can do that at 304-837-2278. Send us some feedback over at the email address feedback@thefringepodcast.com. Mentioned our Twitter address, GSM Podcasts, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Golden Spiral Media. So we've got 3 podcasts left in the Rewatch. We'll finish up season 4. And then Clint and I will be doing 2 more podcasts this summer. We've got one to catch us up on all of the comic books that we haven't yet covered. And then we have our season 4 recap that we do every season. So in that episode of the season, what will be the season 4 recap episode, Clint and I will talk about our favorite moments from season 4, our least favorite moments, favorite characters, favorite episodes, all those sorts of things, and then kind of make some predictions about what we're going to get in season 5. So we will still be doing that episode. And so the comic book podcast and the season 4 recap podcast that Clint and I will do will come here in the next couple of weeks. So that's all the information I think I have to share before we get out of here tonight. You guys have anything else?
I want to say that I really hate Wallflower in first perspective. So good luck next week.
Well, I'm glad you're not a part of it then. Thanks. We'll see. I don't... Wallflower, I do remember, but I remember liking it, I think. I do remember the episode. For its perspective, I'm not sure about off the top of my head, but we'll see.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Did
guys,
you go back and listen to the season 3 recap?
The season 3 recap, I've listened to about the first hour of it. You're the one that tweeted me about that the other day, right?
Yes, about how some of the predictions that you made were surprisingly accurate.
Yeah, I've got right at the hour mark on that, so I haven't gotten to the predictions part of the episode. I'll finish listening to it this week, though. But after you tweeted me about that, I'm like, I'm going to have to go check that out now. But I haven't made it all the way through.
Very interesting.
Cool. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast tonight. It's been a ton of fun. All right, so I'm going to sign off first, and then there'll be Allan, and then John, and then Brandon. So until next time, stay Fringe-tastic.
Please don't invalidate me.
It's better to remember when than why.
I have looked at all possible future podcasts, and in every one, the result is the same. You must tune in again next week.
Nice. The Fringe Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Warner Brothers, or Fox. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, and for educational purposes, as provided within United States Code, Title 17, aka Fair Use. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.